It's a bit of a grey old day here today, so let's go indoors this time and let me show you around one of my favourite places with a lot of history, the Fleet Air Arm Museum. And where better to have a museum like this than an active Royal Naval Air Base? RNAS Yeovilton has been the museum's home since 1964, when it started with just 3 aircraft, and now it has more than 100. And when we say Fleet Air Arm, that is essentially the flying department of the Royal Navy, featuring everything from jets to helicopters. Now, you'll read a lot about the name Westlands in this museum, which was actually a Yeovil-based company that made aircraft for the First and Second World Wars, before going on to make some iconic helicopters that would serve in the Falklands, both Gulf Wars, and Afghanistan. But it wasn't just conflicts that these helicopters served in.
The sleepy village, right in the heart of it here, where the river deluge came on both sides of the building that was in the centre, which really quite astonished everybody, because that was when we realised the full strength of this torrent.
August 16th, 2004. The village of Boscastle in Cornwall makes national news when 3 weeks' worth of rain fell in just a few hours. The valley acted like a funnel, and the raging torrent of water swept dozens of vehicles towards the sea. It's estimated that 2 million tonnes of water went through Boscastle that day.
All I was thinking to myself was, come on, hurry up, hurry up.
But it was the Westland Sea King, flown by the brave men and women of the Royal Navy, along with the RNLI and the emergency services, that came to the rescue. Now that day sticks out in my mind as well, because I actually remember being in Cornwall when it was all happening. I was down in Helston, which was right round the corner from RNAS Culdrose, which is where these Sea Kings were based. And I just remember the commotion of all the helicopters, all of these Sea Kings flying over one after the other, bringing people back to safety, going back to Boscastle to rescue more. They must have rescued over 100 people who were stranded by the raging torrent, trapped on their roofs. It must have been absolutely terrifying, and the death toll on that day was 0, apart from a broken thumb. Nothing short of a miracle, I'd say. Away from the helicopters then, you step into Hall 2 and you see what would have been on the deck of an aircraft carrier in World War II. But you won't just learn about aircraft in here.
Wonderful airplanes were produced. I mean, like the ones that spring to my mind as the superb airplanes of World War II. On the British side are, of course, inevitably Spitfire and the Mosquito and the Lancaster.
The voice there of Captain Eric Winkle Brown. Nicknamed Winkle for his short stature, he was a Royal Navy test pilot who trained here at Yeovilton before going on to fly 487 different types of aircraft. That's more than anyone else in history. Now, one of his more notable accolades dates back to 1945 on a foggy 3rd of December when the then Lieutenant Eric Winkle Brown was carrying out carrier landing trials. He was trying to land the Sea Vampire, the Fleet Air Arm's brand new jet-engined aircraft, on HMS Ocean. But as it was a foggy day, it was too dangerous, so HMS Ocean signalled to Eric Winkle Brown to say, don't do it, it's too dangerous, too risky. But he didn't get the message, didn't get the memo, so he did it anyway. So in his own words, he says he emerged like a banshee and screamed round the ocean, making him the first person to land a jet-engined aircraft on an aircraft carrier. And that aircraft, the Sea Vampire, is this one here. Your move, Maverick.
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
Well, it's funny you should mention speed, because once you've had your fill of the wonderful new carrier experience, you step into my favourite hall at the museum. Any guesses as to why?
Départ à destination de New York, vol Concorde numéro 1, embarquement immédiat.
The giant gleaming white dart, which points the way to the supersonic future of intercontinental transport, was about to make its public debut.
It's one of the only times that Britain and France worked so well together, and it's quite hard to believe that Concorde was unveiled back in the 1960s. It was so ahead of its time, and it all started with this one, Concorde 002, the British prototype.
The eyes of the world were on Concorde 002 as she taxied towards the runway at Yeovilton. It was Chief Test Pilot Brian Trubshaw's decision whether she flew or not. It could be another high-speed taxi test, but the great bird looked ready to fly, and fly she did.
.002's objective was to pave the way for the future of the aircraft by carrying out supersonic testing, where it would reach a maximum speed of 1,350 miles per hour.
Begun. The second Concorde, the British Concorde, had been proved a machine of the skies.
Concorde 002 would carry out 7 years' worth of tests before its final flights into Yeovilton in 1967, where it would spend the rest of its days here in this museum. It may have been the end of her career, but it marked the start of a romantic 27 years for the Anglo-French Concorde fleet, carrying the rich and the famous, from the likes of Frank Sinatra to Queen Elizabeth II. And on the 7th of February 1996, Concorde would set a world record by flying from New York to London in just 2 hours, 52 minutes and 59 seconds. Well, after 27 years of taking people across the Atlantic Ocean, Concorde was deemed far too expensive by both Britain and France in terms of running costs and maintenance. So both nations said enough was enough. And on the 26th of November 2003, 20 years to this year, Concorde made her final flight into Yeovilton in Bristol. And you can still see that Concorde, as you can here at Yeovilton with 002. Why don't you visit them both sometime? I'll see you next time.